Greetings, nerds. This is CNN Nerd. I'm your host, Sarah Belmont, and with me, as always, is our Mr. Producer, Will Polk. How are you doing tonight, Will?
Doing very well. How are you doing this evening, sir?
Doing fine. It's a rainy day in Alaska.
Yeah, we had a little bit of rain here from Ida. Thankfully, North Carolina was spared this time. We had another storm that came up from the Gulf, I guess, 2 weeks ago. But this time Ida gave us a pass and gave us a break. So it was actually nice and cool. Perfect day here today. So it was nice.
Opposite here. Just gloomy. I'm cold.
Yeah.
I'm cold. There's leaves on the ground. I'm like, oh yeah, it's September.
Yeah.
So early fall weather. Great.
Nice. Yeah. Nice.
Oh man.
Yeah.
It's been a slow news week.
It has. But speaking of news, one of the interesting bits of news from a few weeks back, and then fast forward to Michael Rosenbaum in his Inside of You pod. He had Stephen on this week, Stephen Amell. And I know you're kind of done with Stephen because of just time and I think the incident on the airplane. And actually, that was as far as news items, that was one of the things that they actually led the podcast out with.
Right.
What was the incident? So, it was. I was like, okay, he just basically got what we suspected. He just had too much to drink. Was an asshole to people, but deeper than that, Rosenbaum's interviews are just amazing. How he can just get people to open up, and every time, whether it's Stephen or I was watching another one. I know you and I were talking about the Brandon Routh one last week, and then and I was watching a couple others where he had folks on, and I just really dig that podcast.
That's funny because prior to starting the show with you today, I was looking at my YouTube feed and I saw that episode come up, and I'm like, okay, watch later. Yeah. And in the headline for it was like to clear the air, so I figured that they were going to talk immediately about that.
Yeah.
But I also, earlier this week, I was listening to an old Tom Welling episode because I think all of the ones that he does, especially with previous cast and crew from Smallville, are really good. And last week I listened to the one with Sophia Bush, which was really interesting. So I completely agree. It's a therapy session. They even talk about how much of it's not necessarily an interview, but a therapy session for the celebrity and Michael himself, who has a lot of issues. But it's I like it. It's really good conversation to listen and to gain insight to these lives of these celebrities and these people.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's not that I'm over Stephen. I don't know. It's just that now that Arrow is over, and because Arrow season 8, it was such a train wreck, and that I don't know. There's just this weird thing where I just don't want to watch heels.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah, I was about to ask you if you've had a chance to watch that yet. I haven't watched it yet either. I think I'm gonna wait until, if I do watch it, I'm gonna wait until the season has concluded and then just do the free trial so I can just binge it.
Yeah, I was gonna say the same thing. Like, part of my resistance, honestly, is not even Stephen Amell to heels. It's just the fact that it's another subscription service, and at this rate, it's getting to be too many, and that would be the only show I would be interested in watching. So and I don't even know if it's going to be season 2. I have, for people who have found the show, I've heard good things about it, but I also haven't heard loud voices where this is must-watch TV now.
Right. Exactly. I've had similar experiences as well with that show. So I think we're on the same page there. I think I'm just I'm trying to not add any more subscriptions. It's hard enough to like just manage what I have. Been like, oh yeah, I have Hulu. I need to like go check out some stuff on that.
I was on Hulu today because I feel like I used to be on Hulu pretty regularly because I did have a good handful of shows. But with 2020, all of those shows seem to have gone in indefinite hiatus, but now Billions is coming back and I'm like, okay, so now I can get back on the Hulu. Yay.
Yay. Yeah. It's this weekend or is it next weekend?
Sunday is when it comes back.
Okay.
Yeah. Cool. I just watched the last episode that aired and I was like, okay, I remember all this. I'm not feeling as if a year has gone by without it. Like, right. But I am curious to see, and it's kind of what we've been experiencing with the Arrowverse shows of, okay, so you clearly had to pretty much botch your last season. Mm-hmm. How do you come back to where you left things off, tie up loose ends, and start this other natural arc for the purposes of this season? Because you're kind of melding. And I also have a theory that they're coming back now to air the last 4 episodes of season 5. And then they'll probably go on a hiatus. And in spring 2022, drop the 6th season. That's my theory.
I think, I can't remember if it was either Billions or maybe Succession, but I think they were one of those shows actually was going to incorporate the pandemic into the storyline. So
they which is funny because in the last episode there was a reference to COVID.
maybe that's already passed. I can't remember when it was going to do it, but I do, like I said, one of those. Yeah, I guess it was Billions where they were incorporating it. So, and I know others have done that too. I mean, I was really seeing speaking of CW and stuff. I was watching a advertisement for like the 4400, and they actually had people wearing face coverings in the promo for what was going on in that episode. So. But then of course, like in Arrowverse, it's just sort of like, what pandemic? So.
Yeah, what pandemic? Speaking about Arrowverse, we did get one bit of casting news. We knew Poison Ivy was coming based on the season finale of Batwoman, but she has been cast as Bridget Regan, who name I don't know, but I did look her up on IMDb, and I've seen a lot of shows she's been in. She's been quietly in the background to a lot of different things.
Yeah. I saw the Deadline article where they had announced her casting, and like you, I wasn't familiar with her. And if she walked on down the street or if it's one of those things like, oh yeah, I remember seeing them in that show. But it's funny because I know Caroline Dries had like teased that they were gonna have some big casting news, I guess, late last week, and then of course I guess it was Monday or Tuesday when they dropped the news that Poison Ivy indeed is going to be showing up in season 3, and of course, as we all know, at the end of that season, Kate had like stolen all the things out of the Batcave, which especially now watching Titans, which I know we'll talk about later, it's interesting to see some of those artifacts in the Batcave now that the Titans are hanging out in Gotham and at Wayne Manor.
Different universe. One is on HBO and one is
I know, but the Bat family's everywhere. It really is at this point.
Oh, well, the Bat family is DC's claim to fame.
Yes, and they're riding that hard because
every show must integrate a bat.
But we just won't see them at all in the CW, but we'll definitely like tease the hell out of them.
Oh yeah. Also about DC and teasing things, it did get confirmed that we will get another full-length trailer for the Batman at the next DC FanDome event, which Will reminded me this week isn't until October 13th.
Yeah, October 16th.
Okay, October 16th.
Yeah.
Which is funny because here's why I asked you that question. It's because I saw that Christian Harloff and Andrew Guy did a show together where they were talking about it.
Mm-hmm.
And
I
it was
watched it.
almost advertised as one of those pre-FanDome events where you talk about all the news. I'm like, wait a second, is it this weekend?
Yeah. I actually did watch that episode this week, and they were getting into a lot of details about the event. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to it. It was of course one of the interesting things that I did note with it. Of course, obviously we got the big news of the Batman trailer. Of course, there's going to be some behind the scenes stuff with the Flash, Black Adam. Maybe now you will actually believe that a Black Adam film is going to happen, or are you just going to wait till it actually shows up in the theater? I don't know.
I have to see it in the theaters. I can't believe that's actually happening after a century.
Yeah, that's actually just funny because I thought of you when I was listening to the Harloff and Guy discussion, because they were talking about, Dwayne Johnson had mentioned this like back in 2013 or 2014 or whenever it was, and I couldn't help but think of you whenever, and started laughing when I actually heard them talking about that, and thought about us and our conversations here about it. But one of the other, and they also have some DC TV, and and the posters that they put out was very interesting. So they had Batwoman, they had Supergirl, which I guess they're going to do a retrospective on that show at the event in October. But I didn't see the TV version of the Flash, and it may just be one of those things where they just didn't want to have Ezra's Flash and Grant's Flash on the same poster or whatever. But even in the video stills and stuff that they were putting out there, and they had other CW shows in it, right. I didn't see them, and freely admit that it's probably nothing. But then again, I was just like, this is like the flagship show now. At least, and some may argue maybe Superman and Lois is now, given that as far as just quality and of writing and everything else. But at least as far as longevity, it's the longest lived show now, given that everybody else is pretty much gone except for Legends.
Yeah.
And
it really should be the flagship show because of the dynamic between Oliver and Barry through the years.
Yeah.
When Oliver left, Barry is now in charge. But I think what we'll be telling is with this crossover event to launch the new seasons, who will be clearly the leader of the group.
Yeah.
And if that will be Barry or if it's Ryan. I think Ryan is one. I don't think it should be Superman.
No, I don't. Yeah.
It really shouldn't, because I don't think that should be the flagship show, because I like how isolated it is. And it feels as though it's not necessarily occurring in the same universe. And I like that, because there is just so much potential for Superman and Lois, because of they haven't gotten those characters right in a very long time.
Yeah.
So now that they have, I just want to make sure we understand the mythology more before we start crossing over into these other expanded universes.
I agree. And maybe a case could be made for Batwoman as far as but the problem is with that one is just the ratings, how long will CW give, how much rope will they give them, moving forward, because especially given that you have another show with a character of color lead coming with Naomi and Ava DuVernay being behind that, will it reach a point where they're like, not, not to sound all mercenary or whatever, but I mean, they be like, well, maybe we dial back on Batwoman, or maybe if season 3 doesn't go off the roof, then maybe they'll say, hey, season 4 is it for them. Who I'm just spitballing, but there is that dynamic going on there. So, but
Yeah.
that's and Naomi's also going to get some I think a tease for the at DC FanDome as well. So we'll get some footage from it, or I think what I read on the actual DC FanDome website, it's a 4-hour event, so it's not going to be like it was the last time, where it was like I think the whole day, and then I think it was like 12-hour. It's a 24. I'm sure they'll like replay it, but I think that first run, it was like I think 12 hours or something like that. Because I remember we were like talking like all day that Saturday when it first happened. And
then,
it
started at like 9 or 8 and ended around 6.
Yeah. So I think this time, it's supposed to start like 10 a.m. Pacific time, and then and run for 4 hours. And I'm sure they'll like run it on a loop, and they're also going to do a DC Kids FanDome event, and it's going to be available. Looks like everywhere as far as streaming. So if you don't want to sign up for the DC FanDome site itself, you can watch it on YouTube and all the other platforms.
Sweet. Speaking about streaming, one of our favorite shows that is on streaming is Doom Patrol, and we did get a full-length trailer for season 3, which is coming out later this month. I have not watched it. I've seen bits and pieces.
Yeah.
But I haven't actually sat down to watch the full trailer. I don't want to.
Okay. Fair enough. I know it's a lot like the other trailers that we've had recently, where they just basically set up all the players for the season.
Yeah.
And so, when it first drops, we see Madame Rogue, and she's a time traveler, and she has a mission for the team, and and of course, all our favorite characters are reacting to that, and we then, she sort of introduces the antagonist, all of those elements going on, and of course, got those funny bits, and just reminded me like why this show is just so awesome. I can't wait to the 23rd for it to drop. Yeah, and I think they might be doing that 3-episode drop thing again too, like they did with Titans.
Yes, because the way they ended season 2 abruptly, it's interesting that the trailers are including like, here's your mission and everything, when the way they that is a dark ending.
It was
to a show, a lot, like, pun intended, Candlemaker. So I hope with the 3-episode drop, they're able to finish what was started last season and do the setup for this season through those 3 episodes. Unlike with Titans, where it just was a setup for this, but they also did get a complete season 2. So
yeah,
there. So yeah, this show just always makes me smile because it's such a unique show. Mm-hmm.
It is.
You would never believe that this group or this story from comic books, which there's a lot of characters, there's a lot of background information, and they just scream dysfunction. But for some reason, when like one of our favorite episodes is group therapy, and that episode works because it's a bottle episode where it's just these characters interacting with each other. Mm-hmm. Which I think last season, one of the negatives was there was not as much togetherness. Yeah. Everyone felt more on their own journeys, and then they were appropriately coupled together, but still, when they're all together, those bring some of the best moments. And so I just hope there is more of that and less okay, you two go there, you two over here, and then you're doing this.
Mm-hmm. Agreed. Yeah, I think that I'm really hopeful. And I know that, like, I know we talked about this before, but I guess the chief is not going to be in this season. Yep. And so, so maybe that'll, having a smaller cast will really allow for that cohesion with the folks to, doing things together, especially with focus of potentially helping Madame Rowe with her plans to take on these adversaries.
Yeah, absolutely. And since I already brought it up, let's just go into Titans.
Okay.
And this episode. What are your thoughts about this episode?
So I just finished watching it right before we recorded. So it's like fresh, raw thoughts here, y'all, as far as my take on the Titans this week. It was a weird change of pace.
Yep.
From where we were last week. I mean, I liked the episode. Don't get me wrong, but I will say, it started. It was a kind of a slow burn at the start.
Oh yeah.
Really, really, really slow burn, and I was like, where is this going? But then, once the reveals happen, I tell you where really it's like when, jump into the middle of the episode when Dick and Gar were figuring out Lady Vic.
Mm-hmm.
For me, that's when the thing started picking up, and then it was just like boom, 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 boom. But prior to that, it was okay. We got we see Blackfire again, and of course, at the very beginning, we have the two state troopers couple, and they randomly get murdered by the villain, who we at this point were like, okay, where? And my thought was like, where is this going?
Yeah, and then there's the tease of flashbacks that end up being a nightmare, but then we go back to that because it does tie into the villain story, the henchman. I don't know if she's a villain.
Oh yeah, she is.
Gordon is a very confusing character.
Yeah, she is. Well, yeah, and Barbara's a very interesting character. They did drop the Oracle reference in this episode, which after Killing Joke, where the Joker made assaulted Barbara, and she was left as a result of that attack, paraplegic. She became Oracle, and if so, and of course, and so so they did have that reference in there. So I'm glad they really dropped in a lot of like those little Easter eggs in this episode that I think really helped when things really did pick up. It made those flashbacks and also the overall arc of this season, tied it back to it.
But it also just there was so many missing flashbacks that it didn't really make sense to me. They had the one tie where Dick and Barbara are being Bonnie and Clyde and stealing these diamonds, and then they find themselves squaring off against Lady Vic, and things happen and unfold.
Right.
But they don't ever return to that as like that's the last heist because somebody got hurt, or how she ended up, because I think she was Batgirl at one point.
She was.
But so there's something about this narrative that they're not, and I hate to say this, they're just not giving me enough of the full history. And I know they're probably doing this on purpose, to make me think like, oh, I understand who she is, her perspective, and why there's this, she's walking this fine line between wanting the vigilantes to help her and then wanting the police to do their job on their own. And beyond that, I don't know what's going on with this whole, clearly Barbara and Dick loved each other, things happen, and then on top of that, the writers really need to figure out what they're doing with Corey and Dick. Okay, we need more of those moments. We know that's gonna happen. It already has happened. It will happen again. But come on, just more. Yeah, I don't know. Like before, what I said is Barbara, especially in this episode, very confusing. Very confusing as to, oh, I just want to have fun and break the rules. To, I'm like I don't know. There's just something off about her.
Yeah. I think that's a good point. I was just thinking about that as you were talking about Dick and Barbara's relationship. And I think I could see where they were trying to put the threads together, because whenever we first see them in the first flashback, it was years ago. Dick was in his Robin costume, and they were testing the security of a museum. With the and then we get the next flashback. Well, then after that, then they're at the bar and they talk about breaking the rules and all that, and establishes their romantic relationship. And then we get to the romantic relationship where they are either looks like they're playing cat burglars on the protective security, or for where Batman was, or I guess not, because I guess Dick was about to get called away to help Batman out with something, and she's like, no, stay here. So there was a lot of like the recklessness, I guess, with that, and which now, and maybe that which resulted in her first set of injuries when Lady Vic cut her leg. And so and we see this evolution of, like, because they were careless and stuff, then she got hurt, then somewhere along the line, of course, obviously the Joker injured her and she became Oracle. But whenever Dick was like, let's use the Oracle program for it, to your point, Barbara's like, no, we just can't do that, because it is that push-pull as far as wanting to have the vigilantes, but also hating the vigilantes. And so Barbara's trying to just like be the straight person now, and it's a weird juxtaposition from the person that we saw earlier in the episode, when the flashback, where they're like, let's just break all the rules and just have and in order to achieve our goal. So and then of course we later saw that too, when Barbara was lured out by Lady Vic, and when Dick called her to like check in, Barbara ignored it. And because, to your point, she has this thing with the vigilantes where she's like, no, I'm we're doing this straight, whatever this is. But also, there's also that weird dynamic. There's that dynamic between Bruce and Barbara too that we saw earlier in the season, where she has a very complicated relationship with Bruce as well. So given that, you think whenever she got that message and say not to bring Dick along, it should have like raised some red flags, but it didn't.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I don't really understand. I feel like we're gonna get more flashbacks, or we have to, for this episode to make sense in the long run. I also don't think that they did a good job with Jason. Just because up until now, we've seen a very different side of him. Last week, it was all Jason and Scarecrow making us understand the events that occurred that made him turn into Red Hood. And then we had tonight's episode where he was He was the Jason we saw from season 2.
Yeah.
And I don't know. It didn't work for me because I'm just like, okay, so why all of a sudden has he reverted back? Why suddenly is he drawing the line, or afraid of that line? And I think they're doing it purposely so that they can prove Gar's point in this episode that Jason can still be saved.
Yeah.
He's still inside there, and he's part of this family too, for better or for worse.
I agree.
But it also just didn't narratively make sense, especially because last week they took the full hour to explain what led him to take on the Red Hood.
And ultimately, I mean, Red Hood's an anti-hero anyway. So I think it was very important for them to have that bit of dialogue between Dick and Gar about Jason and whether or not he's redeemable or not, or is Dick going to kill him. To your point, that and then when we see the robbery that takes place in Tim Drake's family's, in the restaurant there, and Jason's reaction to it, and having to do the inhaler to basically remove those feelings of remorse. Then so ultimately, I think we are starting to see the beginnings of Jason pulling away from Scarecrow and not being manipulated by Scarecrow. Maybe we also see what shreds of he knows what's going down is wrong. And so he's using this as a coping mechanism with this drug, and and maybe we'll start to see him get weaned from the addiction from it, and then go back to again just being an anti-hero. And not obviously he won't be able to go back to the Titans, but there will be some lines that he just won't cross.
Yeah. And then we have Blackfire and Starfire. The sisters are reunited, and that's building. Whatever's happening there, that is definitely going to reach a climax. Connor and Blackfire had some good moments.
They did.
I think Connor's becoming both Connor and Gar. For the last few episodes, I'm like, okay, we'll push them to the center more. Push them.
Yeah, I was reading a blog post about this very thing about those two characters, and just to show this third season overall. And whenever we were talking about Doom Patrol, it made me think about it again with people being paired off, and the whole. And I guess this article I was reading really underscored the point that the whole purpose of them leaving San Francisco, and it seemed that the premise of the third season was for them to get away from San Francisco, come to Gotham, be this great big team, and do all the things together and work together. But to your point, like you said, with Doom Patrol season 2, it seems like in season 3 we're getting all these pairings. We got the Dick story, we got Blackfire and Corey paired off with Gar, but there's no overall big unit cohesion, it seems. I mean, I guess there was some with when they were trying to save Hank from the bomb, which this week they were able to save the Doctor from that this time around.
Yeah.
So I guess there's elements of it. So, but I guess the one time they did the big team thing together, it was early on in the season, and that was actually when they had the big F up at that bank, and when they were first dispatched to Gotham, and when Barbara was like, "No more, I'm done with you guys."
Yeah, well, I mean, we saw that they had become a team in San Francisco, but ever since they've been in Gotham, because Dick's roots are deeply invested in Gotham and what's going on with that city. It's kind of made him go on his own journey after Jason and everyone, and now Corey's found her sister. So yeah, I agree with that article. I think that's what's overall happening, and I think that's what continues to happen with this show in general, where we want to see the team, but they're usually the team at the beginning and at the end of the seasons, but throughout it, they are on their own journeys. For whatever reason. But
one last point on this one that what was a standout, and I think where the episode really did pick up was seeing Dick's detective skills. I thought that was pretty dope with the way he and Gar utilized the equipment to like figure out that it was Lady Vic that was the one who had committed those assaults on the murders in the doctor. I thought that was probably one of the strongest points of the episode this week, and it really reminded us of Dick's skills as a detective, and so which hopefully we'll get to see more of that as the season progresses.
I agree. All right. Also on TV this week was Stargirl season 2. We got an Artemis heavy episode, surprisingly. We saw a bit more of Eclipso and how Cindy or Eclipso is manipulating people so that they can form the Young Injustice Society.
Yep.
And Courtney meets Shade in the library where she learns of his true intentions, even though it's Courtney, so she never believes anything from a villain's mouth.
Yep.
And what else happened? We got a lot of McNider. We found out Charles McNider is actually still alive, despite the headlines and the news reports. But he is trapped in the Shade.
Yeah.
And I think that is about it.
Those were. I mean, I think what I liked this week's episode, because I know last week we were kind of down on it. This week was really, I thought, was a really good bounce back, real good deep dive into some of the character stuff with the team. I think we are starting to see the growth of Courtney, and even within the episode, she even notes like, look, Omi would have just like ran off and did whatever, but we're starting to see her mature some. And also, the other thing that I thought was a nice little callback to the first episode this season was with Bruce Gordon, and also. Them learning about McNider's daughter being murdered,
right?
And because remember the kid who was Bruce.
Yep.
So they're so I like what they're doing, how they're building the story, and it really and all these little connections are starting to come together with this series, and so I thought this episode to me advanced the story quite a bit, and of course it was very heavy Artemis, and like actually Artemis's parents are going to be these series regulars in the 3rd season, so those are nice little beats too, I thought, between the moms in particular as far as like dealing with teenagers and stuff. And so, those little moments can, resonate for viewers, especially if they're similarly situated like I am. So, it was a good episode this week.
It was all right.
Yeah. I mean,
last week was such a low note for me that this week did a bit better because they actually decided to take a character and focus in on them, and it made sense. It dealt with some of a reminder about the consequences for everything that happened in the finale, and that's what I think the new Justice Society doesn't really understand that, yeah, they defeated the bad guys, but they also, with that victory came a lot of loss for other people.
Yeah.
And Icicle's offspring is still wandering the town, lurking in the background. Yep. But I'm waiting for that real moment of and we saw a little bit of that where Courtney is looking at Artemis and her parents and saying, why do I feel bad for them? Well, you feel bad for them because in that moment you're seeing a family who are being torn apart, despite how those parents, like, their choices led them to that. And also a kid who looked up to her parents, thought they were the good guys, and suddenly realizing that they're not. Yeah. No wonder it's easy for Eclipso to seep in there and increase doubt, and resentment and anger, because that's a very hard thing to realize who your parents actually are, despite who you thought they were for your entire childhood. I still think this episode is okay because I'm just waiting. I remember there was a bit of a wait last season, where it took Icicle literally killing a kid for me to be like, okay, this is different. And it's not like I need Eclipso to actually kill someone. He technically already did in the very first episode. But I'm waiting for a real, not a darkness, but I'm waiting for the everything they're setting up for there to be a big bang, some fallout, some regrouping, and some advancement. And I'm also, I don't know, there's still something odd about how they're getting better about Beth. Beth has been getting a lot of screen time, but Tyler and Yolanda still seem to be put on the back burner, and I'm curious to see what happens with their arcs, because at this point it doesn't seem like the writers know what to do with them in order to get them to where they want them to be at the end of the season.
Yeah, I can 100%, 1000% agree with what you just said. Can't really add more to that.
Yeah, but it was interesting for this episode to air after that bit of news that you brought up about them being Sportmaster and Tigress being series regulars next season. So yeah. They'll be breaking out of prison again and again and again.
Yep.
Or not, maybe. But yeah, we'll see. Yep. Last but not least, we have Marvel with a what if about Doctor Strange. What if he lost his heart and not his hands? One of the stupidest. When I read that title, I thought to myself, well, okay, that's an easy question to answer. He would be dead. Okay. I'm sorry, you can't live. And then quickly they're like, yeah, we say heart, but what we really mean is the love of his life. Yeah. What if is surprising me, because I appreciate how this concept, they week after week morph and are able to tell a different and this is no pun intended, a different version of time and the Watcher and just a different perspective. I mean, the way from the very first episode, Captain Carter, there was no divergence from that mythos, and that character, and it was very beat for beat. And then when this episode with Doctor Strange, it was the first 15 minutes felt like, okay, this is similar to what they did with but oh no, he can't undo that. It's a fixed point in time. And then they're like, oh, he's going dark. Okay, I get it. And then they added another twist, which I did not see coming, where it's like, which makes sense. I mean, why would you bring the Ancient One in and her really not do anything?
Yeah.
Oh no, she created this. So I like how the consequences that played out.
Yeah.
Because it made sense to me. I was listening to Kind of Funny review, and they didn't really understand this episode. And if it's a fixed point in time, which it would be for this character in this universe, because they made it very clear in this timeline, had she not died, he would have never become the Sorcerer Supreme.
Right.
Which would inherently undo everything else he did in that role and on that path, and therefore the universe as they knew it would be destroyed. So that makes complete sense to me.
Yeah. I watched that one today too, and I saw. I think they were missing the point of. I think some of the panelists there were missing the point of the what if, and they were getting all wrapped around the axle and like the traditional thinking of evaluating the MCU. And you're right in your introductory comments about the series so far. I mean, it really, as an anthology series, I mean, these are all standalone stories, and it's really showing the maturity, how the MCU has matured. I mean, this was the right moment for this show to come along.
Right.
We couldn't have done it about, back in, after 10 movies. We needed it's that we're at that place now. We're post the Infinity Saga. I think we're post, and we've gotten these established characters, but then this week's episode really, shows the flexibility and the storytelling acumen that the writer's room, quite frankly, that this series has.
I agree. This show was made for this phase at the beginning, because the moment in Endgame when it's like, oh, we're doing time travel. Oh, that makes everyone a bit nervous. Yeah. Because the moment you introduce time travel, you got to have your rules established. You have to, and they talk. I mean, Endgame arguably is a very, like, you map it all out. It has to make sense, and the fact that not only was it about getting the stones from those places in time, but returning them, because you don't want to disrupt the events.
Right.
Like with this episode with Doctor Strange, it's a fixed point in time, because it's something that if you do undo, you can't like travel back again and kill her.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
like you can't undo that kind of thing, given the events that follow that death. So I think what I also found very interesting is this episode could have played out beat for beat what happened in Doctor Strange, where he did lose his hands. But the real choice was, does he ever go back and say, oh, I want my surgical abilities back, and undo that? And I don't think that would be something he would have ever done. So I get why they in place had to make him have this love affair, and that got cut short and lose the love of his life. It's also similar. I think Uncle Ben's death is a fixed point in time
it's
for
a fixed
Spider-Man.
point yeah, you're right. It is a fixed point in time for that. And I think the other thing about this show, especially now where we're at, and we just coming off of Loki and the and WandaVision as well, because I was so blown away by this episode. I was like, as soon as I finished watching it last night, I sent you a text. I was just like, wow, because I was just like, I was like, if we could, I was like about to say, let's just throw over mics right now. Let's talk about this thing because there was with the time travel piece element to it. And instead of doing and we've seen all these things before, we're all well established as geeks, the various time travel rules, either whether it's from the Flash or Back to the Future, Quantum Leap, whatever. But what really struck me about this episode was it started out dark and it finished dark. It was like, okay. Yes, we know normally in these kind of things, yes, the hero wins and all is set right with the timeline. And yes, there's some consequences and stuff, but but usually it doesn't involve, the consequences usually don't involve ending the universe.
Right. Which should. I mean, depending on what you're undoing, I kept thinking about the trailer for No Way Home.
Yeah, that was going to go there next. Yeah,
I couldn't not think about that and how potentially consequences. I don't think that's going to be a fixed point in time. I really don't. No, I think it truly has to do with when you're trying to undo death. Mm-hmm. Which is very different than undoing, suddenly I can't perform surgery, or I took this cab and not this cab. Yeah,
or everybody knows my secret identity, right. And I just need to undo it. But but it also gave this episode gave a lot of context to this No Way Home trailer as well, because a lot of people were just going down that rabbit hole of like, it's got to be Mephisto, as far as Doctor Strange. And I, as I was telling you last night when we were texting about this, I haven't watched Doctor Strange. I think I maybe watched it maybe 2 times all the way through. Mm-hmm. And I had forgotten about the book, the magic book that that in Strange he had, to learn the spells and stuff. But in becoming the Sorcerer Supreme in this episode, he, at least half of Strange, I guess, he conjured a bunch of different types of magic. I mean, he had the chaos magic because we saw the red chaos magic from Wanda. Mm-hmm. We saw the normal orange magic that we've seen the sorcerers use, the purple dark magic from Agatha. Mm-hmm. And so thinking back to No Way Home and why that this version of Stephen Strange seemed a little quirky or odd in the trailer, and maybe people were thinking it was something else. I was like, no, I think it's just setting up his becoming a Sorcerer Supreme to be the counterpoint to Wanda and Doctor Strange too. Because she clearly is a Nexus being, and normally you can only have one. At least in the comics, you can only have one Nexus being in any particular universe. But the MCU is very willing to change things around. And one of the things I theorized with you last night was well, maybe Strange is going to be this what we're seeing here is the potential counterpoint of him being another Nexus being in the Prime universe to be the counterbalance to Wanda as the Sorcerer Supreme, to be able to take her on. And maybe this is what we saw here in the What If show on Disney Plus is going to maybe feed into either into WandaVision or potentially feed into the lessons that Stephen's going to have to utilized to set things right after Peter screwed him, distracted him while they were trying to help him forget his identity. There's a couple, so many places you can go to there.
Yeah, and I like that No Way Home is going to be quickly followed by Doctor Strange, because we're getting that in March, right?
Right.
So thank God, because if we had to wait like a year, I can only imagine. And I mean, it's been long enough a wait. And right now we're kind of, Loki was ended with such a high to want to know more, that they're using this opportunity to experiment with the rules, the realities, and also get us more used to this idea that the MCU is now a multiverse.
Yeah.
So the characters you think are going to have these slight changes and these nuances to them. And but you can't relate that to what you saw in the movies, because that's not the same version.
Right. Yeah.
So I like that they're through this show, they're telling these stories, and they're also expanding our ideas about who these characters are, and the choices that they make, and to get us ready for No Way Home, where we're going to see familiar faces, but maybe not exactly who we are accustomed to them being. As well as to whatever's going to happen with Doctor Strange or Doctor Strange 2. Definitely agree with you that there's going to be some consequences for his part in No Way Home that will tie directly into what happens in March. And it's surprising, because like I'm like you, I don't even remember sitting down and watching Doctor Strange, but I can't wait for the sequel.
For sure. Cause
you think that Spider-Man got a lot of views when that trailer dropped? I can only imagine what Doctor Strange 2 trailer will do.
Yeah. Oh, for real, because especially, depending on when they drop it, if they drop it pre No Way Home or post, because
Gonna be post.
Because I guess the thing is, because it probably will be post, because in this context, Marvel Studios are being controlled versus Sony, so they'll do it right, so they won't like spoil the outcome like
somebody with a camera on that.
True. Yeah, but you're right. I mean, I think they are setting us up, and I think as fans, we just have to, given that, to your point, they've introduced time travel. They have completely they teased it in WandaVision, and then they completely confirmed it with the events that happened at the end of Loki, that we are in a multiverse now. And thinking about the multiverse and thinking about the Watcher and some of the things, like, for example, each week the Watcher is becoming more and more of a presence. And also thinking about Stephen and his powers getting stronger. He, again, the Watcher is a Celestial, and whenever he was, observing Stephen and made the comment, I mean, Stephen, like, who said that?
Right.
So, so Stephen, as we're seeing that growth of him, so that by the time we get to the live action version of him again in No Way Home, and then Doctor Strange 2, we know what the Sorcerer Supreme looks like now, and we see that evolution, and even when we kind of here's how it turned out in this particular universe, but in the Prime universe, where all these stories have taken place to date, we're going to see that version of the Sorcerer Supreme in Doctor Strange 2, and it's just going to be glorious to see him and Wanda showdown.
Yeah, absolutely.
Not glorious. It's going to be marvelous.
Marvelous. Oh, yeah. You got to do the play on words. Definitely.
Yeah.
All right. Well, the Watcher's presence I anticipate something big happening with him at the end of this season, which will hype us even more for the Eternals, because we're going to start to understand a little bit more about Celestials, I think.
Yeah.
So yeah, it's Feige. He's always playing chess while everyone else is just like, I don't understand.
Mephisto.
Didn't realize you were doing that, but in Feige we trust. He's definitely moving the pieces where they need to be for this major concept to pay off.
Yep.
So, all right, on that note, Will, why don't you tell our listeners where they can find you?
Yes, you can find me and throw all your theory spirals on this week's episode of What If at Will M. Polk, WILLMPOLK on Twitter.
And you can find me on Twitter at SJ Belmont, SJBELMONT. Please follow our crew on Twitter at CNN Nerd. Friend us on Facebook, follow us on Instagram. And we have a website at www.cnnerdpodcast.com. But most importantly, rate, follow, and comment on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, YouTube, Google Podcasts, or wherever you get your podcasts. Good night, Geek Out. You're welcome.